Hello everybody, welcome back to 10 Minute Reviews. I'm Jason.
I'm Amy.
And the fuzzy one that's wandering around somewhere is Freya. I'm sure she will put in an appearance at some point.
Because she crazy.
And she cray-cray. So for today, I want to talk about an author. I know it's a big shock. Actually, I want to talk about a book, or more accurately, a book series. I know it's a real big shock to you guys because, we talk about authors of books. This is within the fantasy genre. That's
Also a shocker.
Yeah, just thank God I'm sitting down. Because, I'm old, so these kind of shocks are really bad for the heart.
Yeah.
So, and this one is a relatively big author, back in, I want to say, the 90s. It was when they were really making their waves within the fantasy genre. So, some of you guys may not have heard of them and heard of their books, and you're missing out. If you're a fantasy fan, you are absolutely missing out. So I want to talk about Mickey Zucker Reichert, and I'm fairly certain the name is Germanic in origin because Zucker is German for sugar, but and Reichert is definitely Germanic. But in particular, I want to talk about their Renshai Chronicles. And Mickey wrote in the Renshai world a lot. There's a lot of books because it was such a big hit for, I think it's her for her books. It was probably her biggest hit was the Renshai Chronicles, but again, she had a ton of books out there that were all hits. I mean, she was a very, very successful fantasy author. But the Renshai Chronicles, it started out as a trilogy, and it's fantasy and the classic fantasy, Middle Ages adjacent is the phrase that she taught me that is probably the best descriptor of it. So swords and sorcery, well, mostly swords, a little bit of sorcery here and there, but mostly swords. And doesn't actually touch on the standard fantasy races. I mean, when you read fantasy, you're thinking elves and dwarves and hobbits and gnomes and
Thanks for at least not calling me a gnome.
No, no.
No, I hate gnomes.
Yeah, and you're a fan of Second Breakfast and Elevensies
And supper.
And dinner. Lunch. Anyway, because I feel like I'm missing out on luncheon. I'm not missing out on afternoon tea.
I do enjoy tea.
But the Renshai Chronicles, they are pretty much human only. It's just people, and they have tribes and they have their kingdoms. And the Renshai are a tribe, and they are a tribe of legendary swordsmen. They have their own sword style, and it makes them supposedly almost unbeatable. The book starts out, the very first book starts out with their tribe being basically annihilated, decimated in a surprise attack. And they lived on an island, they pretty much lived by themselves. And then it kind of segs into just some of the lone survivors, I suppose. And it starts out seeming as though the main character is going to be Rache, R-A-C-H-E, Rache. He's a child that is survives and gets off the island, ends up making his way to one of the nearby kingdoms, and his sword skills, even as a child, he'd already started learning the sword and had watched so much practice. He had all of the forms, you could say, in his head. So he continued to train himself, but even as, I think he was a 12-year-old child, he was defeating grown adults one-on-one with a sword, because of the training he had received up to that point. So he continues to train himself, and he ends up basically like a sword master for a local noble. I don't remember if it was a king or if it was like a duke or something, but he's basically a sword master. Now, through the trials and tribulations of his early life, he ends up paralyzed from the waist down. So he's a paraplegic, and that actually does not stop him from being the swordsman and being this legendary warrior for this noble, because he just basically has himself tied to a horse and wields his swords from horseback. His arms still work. And the first book basically just kind of covers sort of his life as he is as he's just living life in this kingdom and hoping to be able to revive the Renshai clan or tribe, because the name is not so much the bloodline as it is the sword skills. It's that they are Renshai based on their sword skills, not their bloodline. It's like, we could adopt somebody and they'd be, you know, they'd be one of us if you know they read books, kind of thing. I mean, it's their it's what they do and how they do it that is what makes them Renshai. So he's hoping he finds basically, yes, and but he finds I believe he finds other if I recall, it's been a long time since I read the first book in the series. He finds another Renshai, and he's looking to basically he wants a breeding program. Now, the rest of the series actually shifts away. You start to think that Raki is the primary character, but he is not. In fact, he ends up dying in this series fairly early on, either the end of book 1 or the beginning of book 2, because it segs over to Kolbe. It looks like it's just Colby, but they actually show the pronunciation in the book, and it's Kolbe.
So more dramatic.
And he had his original last name, but we're going to ignore that because it turns out that while he is Renshai, and he is a legendary Renshai warrior, legendary even within the Renshai, it's the further books that really start to branch out into fantasy and go more into the typical fantasy stuff, such as the gods. The Renshai Chronicles uses our gods, though. So Kolbe's real name eventually turns out to be Kolbe Thorson. So by the third book, it's more he's definitely segging into things like saving the world and all that usual crap, because saving the world is just
usual trope.
Yeah, but it also starts delving into the gods' lands and the gods' worlds and the gods' wars and the gods' fights and land. My daddy once told me land. And it's utterly fascinating. It's a great fantasy novel that uses some of our own myths, such as the Norse gods and Norse mythology, to make this fantasy series in this fantasy world that, again, it's absolutely outstanding. So I forgot to say it earlier. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons
Down below.
and go check out Mickey Zucker Reichert and the Renshai Chronicles in particular. The other books by Reichert are absolutely fantastic, but the Renshai Chronicles in particular are amazing. You guys got to check it out. Otherwise, thank you very much for watching, and we'll catch you guys next time. Bye now.
Bye.